is, which he calls R130. So I got it now. Mentioned in there too, right? Yes. All right. Oh, I'm on there. Whoop, whoop.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right,
No, you can't. Is yours off? Yours is on mute?
I'm gonna leave the meeting.
Well, now you're not doing it.
Right, I left the meeting.
All right.
So,
If you keep yours on mute, it should be okay. Actually, turn your sound off too, huh?
all right, I just muted my speaker,
Okay.
but that's weird
That is weird.
because I was muted
Mm-hmm.
on my screen.
Is that's not you, that's is that one of your members that couldn't make it tonight but is gonna zoom in, Alex? KL?
Yeah, we do have somebody who's zooming in. Tom's gonna be zooming in.
Okay.
Okay.
Is he waiting to get in or?
No.
It's a KL.
There's
It could be a
KL.
member of the public.
All right. So I'm not gonna join with computer audio.
Hi.
Hey, how are
How are
you?
you? See, do we have to sit up here or are we guests now? I don't know.
No, you're at the big table.
You got to, yeah.
It's a lot of pressure.
You tried, that's
Pretty
pretty good.
tried though, yeah, but now you're at the grown-up
You
table.
see how I tried to defeat?
Yeah, that was a good try. I really.
Effort was there. I think, excuse me.
I will join Alex.
Is this the map that was bringing you?
On the agenda?
Yeah,
Okay.
we've got it. That one, this is the same one. too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you like me to email it to you?
Yeah, I think we sent it in. Who owns those good things?
Okay, I sent it to Kurt today and he put it together and he said, come down.
I think it's cute that they put eyes on the owl.
No idea what I'm doing. And I formatted it a little better.
There are water authority properties here
Yeah,
too.
I'll send that.
Alex, are you ready?
There are water authority property here.
Yeah, it's Birmingham. So our problem, the folks at New England Geo.
Yeah.
Very literal. Because we asked for RWA property, so we didn't pick up the
Okay.
Birmingham and
Okay.
Connecticut Water Authority or
Yeah,
water, yeah.
Okay.
So,
That's very literal. But I can pencil it in on the one I have at home.
okay, so we got that.
Hiram, did you see Norm Cole's letter? Which letter on? He gave one to, I think, Kurt. He sent it to me. I was in Washington DC doing other things. Norman tries to avoid me for some reason.
About chairs and when we're.
Oh, hey, hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good to see you.
Snuck
I'm
in.
gonna,
Gotta admit, that side of the table's better than this side.
Oh,
I'm gonna set this.
you don't miss that side, right?
Well, since we're not really making any decisions tonight anyway.
You know what,
You mean
Kim,
this-
this seat is still warm, still warm, still hot.
It's full of sweat.
Alex, are you good if I set it to record?
I'm sorry.
Are you good if I set it on record to start?
Did you get that?
We
Hi?
can, we don't have,
Well, we could wait a few more minutes, but if I.
yeah, I mean, we got Tom, Kim, myself, so we're waiting 2 more people. I know Leslie's coming, she told me she was coming, I haven't heard from Lauren.
I'll record it when you say to record.
Okay,
Hiram, did you get that email?
I think she knew about this one.
Yeah.
Leslie,
No,
she should, I mean, I've been sending
I
out.
just texted her yesterday. I didn't even think to ask her. She's supposed
I
to.
did send out a reminder this afternoon.
This chair's so high, my feet can't reach the ground.
I think you can set that.
You can adjust.
I just realized that. That's better.
Is that a chair issue or you probably?
You know,
So are you expecting a full?
I was hoping for a full, but they have a Zoom option too.
We don't have anybody else waiting to get in, right?
Tom is on.
They're beating down the doors.
Who's KO?
What are these numbers?
You don't know who counts,
Public.
Hey, Leslie.
What are these numbers?
but since public can't show, so.
Like 119/15.
Yeah, this way, another,
119/42.
just to give them a chance.
Hey, Stephanie.
I can text
Is
Lauren.
Hey, Al, one of the members of commission or committee?
No, we don't.
We have no idea.
Okay.
Shouldn't have my back pen.
I mean, our only K is an M, so.
I can't. Can't find.
I mean, she's, her last name begins with M,
For,
for
sorry,
the planning and zoning.
we're not waiting for,
Well, I'm waiting for any other members of.
I haven't heard from anyone either way, aside from the communications that we've shared.
Right, and I shared those with everyone, so.
Yes.
No reason to wait. Go
So
for
it's
it.
Nancy and Karen on your end.
Right.
I'm just
Nancy
checking with
Karen on
Lauren.
my end.
I think she's probably not coming back.
Let me check.
Lauren. Yes. We've been texting back and
Oh,
forth.
we're good. Just not from my kids.
Yeah.
They're not coming.
No.
I don't have either phone number, can you text them?
Who would you like me to text?
Oh my.
Karen and Nancy.
Is Tom?
Brad may not make it, I mean, he.
Tom's,
Brad would be nice if he.
He's recovering, he's less,
Yeah, all right.
he's less than 10 days out.
All right, we can get the show on.
Yeah.
We'll catch him up when they come.
Brave man.
All right. Record to whatever.
Looks like it's not-
Thank you. Well, the owl has a feminine voice.
Would you like the honors of pulling us?
All right, this is the joint meeting of the Housing Advisory Group and the Planning and Zoning Commission to discuss ideas about attainable housing in Bethany. And just developmental plans and the P O C D.
Sounds good.
We'll go to order. I'm gonna let Alex go for his part. Actually, we have the attendance, right, Stephanie?
If everyone could just state their name.
Okay.
Adam Carrington.
Brian Fournier.
Leslie Higginspittle. In Britain.
Bob Harrison.
Steve Parquist.
Alex Hutchinson. And yeah, town planner Hiram Peck.
And your member, first and last.
Oh,
Who is
Tom
on?
Mabry, I'm sorry.
He's.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom. Is that Alex, you?
Okay. Since this is our first meeting, we have no minutes to review and approve. So I'm gonna jump right into it. We try to keep our meetings to 1 hour. I promised certain people we would not be here any later than 8:30. So we'll see how it goes. We'll do a time check around 8 or so and see how people want to go. So first, just a quick update on what the heck we've been doing. the Housing Advisory Committee. I do have a list. Thought I could keep it down to just a short paragraph, but we've been busy. First thing I do want to share with you, though, just so that we can sort of level set with everybody, I do want to share the charter for our committee. Every time I do this, change the screen, I got it. Okay. I think it's just important for us to kind of we try to remind ourselves as a committee, what is our reason for being? And so our purpose is really to serve as a resource to planning and zoning on ways to implement. Originally, it was the Affordable Housing Plan. That plan no longer is valid. With the new HB 8002, which Hiram will spend a little bit of time talking about, that plan is now dead. So our focus isn't on trying to implement that. Our focus is really working with planning and zoning on addressing the housing needs of Bethany. And however that has to factor into the POCD that I know you all are going to begin working on this year. What we've been doing is trying to educate ourselves and get everybody sort of on a level field in terms of understanding the housing needs and what kind of resources are out there. We're very fortunate. Leslie has an incredible background that's very germane to this. So we have to sometimes pull it out of her, but Leslie has tremendous experience and knowledge of people in the market as it relates to attainable housing, sustainable housing, affordable housing, however you want to categorize it. So this is our charter. Any questions about this? We're advisory, so we don't execute anything. Our job is primarily to be a resource to planning and zoning, to the Board of Selectmen periodically, if and when they would like us to meet with them. But we're really a resource for planning and zoning. Kim and I, having been recent participants in planning and zoning, appreciate the fact that 98% of your time has to be dealt with immediate issues of zoning, whether it's applications, complaints, or whatever, which doesn't leave a lot of time for the actual planning part. So hopefully we can be a resource on that. Things that we've talked about, I'm just going to hit these quickly. If anybody wants to get into more detail, please feel free to ask Leslie, Kim, myself, or Tom. We have reviewed the zoning regs. We've been focusing particularly on language related to the elderly housing district, housing opportunity development district, and attainable housing overlay zone. Those are three things within our regs right now that do allow for potential higher density housing than typically we have in our zoning regs. So I'm not going to dive into that right now, but we can come back and talk more. We have spent some time talking about the State Police Barracks, the abandoned building up there. I've had conversations with Carol. She's had some conversations with people in the state. I know, Steve, you probably had some. So there's an inkling that the state is prepared and is going to be rebuilding the barracks up there. What's not clear is whether the abandoned building is going to be raised as part of that effort. Carol's understanding, at least the last time I talked to her, was that they were actually going to replace the existing building. So I thought they might shift everything over, raise the old building, build a new one, and then do whatever they're gonna do. But what she's heard is the plan is they're gonna take down the existing barracks and rebuild. If that's the case, what are they gonna do with the lot that's next to it? So we've been talking a little bit about it. We will, I am planning to talk to a resource. I'll kind of let you know what's available at the state, but try to get a better handle on what is the state planning to do with that. And is there a partnership opportunity between the town and the state to better utilize that land and make it more productive for housing? We've talked about funding options and strategies. This is something Leslie has a lot of experience with. Talking about housing connections of Connecticut, helping local residents meet community needs. It's a program through the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, administered by Local Initiative Support Corporation. We've talked about the potential of developing a nonprofit for housing development, looking at things like taking on responsibility for the pre-development phase, concept feasibility, deal making, acquisition, construction, operation phase. These exist elsewhere in the state. And again, part of what we're going to propose is maybe a joint field trip where we can talk to folks in Litchfield County that have created these things and executed through these vehicles to do various types of housing initiatives. We had a meeting with Bob Wiedemann, who's a developer out of Wallingford, to understand key issues developers need to consider related to smaller, more dense housing solutions. Things he touched upon were subsidies for affordable housing are necessary. And you can get these through state funds in some cases, but private development alone cannot achieve any significant cost reduction. So from a developer point of view, you can't just say, oh, we want to do these things and expect that they're going to come running to your door. We know about 830G, but balancing affordable units with market rate units is a real challenge for a developer. Other constraints are infrastructure or lack thereof and zoning requirements. So we touched upon a lot of things. And again, we're just trying to understand what are some of the barriers and issues that developers have and why wouldn't they want to proceed with something? So it's going to be critical for us to keep that in mind. We've had conversation, myself, Hiram, and at the time, Lena, when she was still CEO, had a conversation with Ben Lovejoy, who serves as a project manager within the Department of Housing at the state. He heads up an office that they've created to provide technical assistance to towns to address housing needs. While it started out as more of a technical assistance resource, what he's indicated is turned more into how can we show and guide you to funding opportunities out there to help kickstart some of this. So I'd like to circle back and have some more conversations with him. But these funding opportunities can be used to identify potential housing development sites and feasibility assessments, including soil testing, engagement with the local community to encourage public participation related to housing development efforts, and regulatory reviews, helping towns review their regs and identifying any potential barriers. Now that's important because, again, as part of 8002, their towns need to have a minimum level of whether it's compliance or lack of barriers in their regs. And that has to happen by July 1st. So there's going to be a fast track effort. I don't know if you guys have started talking about that or not, but that's probably going to be something on your plate. we had a meeting with Larry Kluch, is it?
Clutch, yeah.
Kluch,
Mhm.
who's an acquaintance of Leslie. He is part of an effort in Brantford called At Home Brantford. They're a nonprofit and they're focused on addressing housing needs in Brantford and working to secure a parcel of land. So what they're focused on is there's an unused old school. And it's just been sitting there. It's, I think, beyond repair. I think it's just to be leveled. Is that?
Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah.
Okay. But their focus is on creating new home ownership opportunities for young families and first-time buyers. That's sort of the target market they're looking at. Return that property to Brantford's tax rolls because it's currently not contributing to tax, and preserve, revitalize, and increase property values in that part of the town. So it is the type of initiative that, if it can be realized, produces tremendous value for everybody, not just for the individual who happens to be able to buy the home. So that's something for us to keep looking at and sort of learning. Do you know if they've gotten any further with
I
that?
think they were accepted as the bidder. It was a town-owned property and then
Yeah.
they got the bid.
And one completed, it's intended to provide 8 single-family homes targeted to families and first-time home buyers, as well as 3 rental units, all of which would meet affordable housing requirements. So that's their goal. We had a meeting with Ben Fink, who's an outside consultant. Was that?
No wonder I'm tired, Alex.
Yeah, I know. He's a consultant that's working with Scrog, working with towns within Scrog. And really his focus is helping towns to engage with the community in discussions about the housing needs and try to do this in a proactive, constructive way, as opposed to, hey, by the way, we're going to put in this and creating substantial backlash. So that's more of a longer term communication, education, interaction type process, but good resource for us to be aware of.
He was on that call the other day.
Was that?
He was on that call the other day with Scrub, wasn't he?
Yes. Yep. Key learnings, and please, anybody on the committee, add to this, but the importance of starting small and learning from proven models and maintaining community trust while seeking to address housing needs in Bethany. That's sort of the critical nut that I think that we've taken away. To that end, between Hiram and Leslie, but Hiram, I don't know if you had any luck in terms of feedback yet.
We talked about,
Litchfield.
yeah, there are several different developments that that I recommend that we take a look at. And I'm kind of in the process of now contacting the managers for those developments.
Mm.
And what we probably don't want to do is have like a caravan of cars, like 6 or 8 in. So we probably like to get those dates as soon as we get rid of some of this white stuff out here, get some dates where we can see the property as well. In the meantime, what I do think is really important is that we take a look at some of the websites, and I'll get a list together for the committee. Websites are really good because they've got pictures of the developments that were done already. They've got a lot of testimonials. There's a lot of videos that are there. And some of the committees you'll see, some of the towns you'll see are not a lot than we are, but have formed organizations which have a good handle on this. Towns that you wouldn't necessarily think about that. But almost every single town, there's a waiting list for every single one of these.
Yeah.
Number one, I think that's an indication of how nice the properties are. But I also think it's a good indication of how well they're run and organized so that they're in keeping with the towns. They're not huge. They're not talking about large buildings and many apartments, things like that. They're well designed, but they're also extremely well run and well managed. I think that we can learn a lot from that. So I'll be putting together a paper for a short paper in terms of just outlining some of these things and talking about some of the online resources that you can take a look at.
That'd be great. So, I mean, I didn't quite complete the sentence there. We're trying to organize a field trip up to Litchfield to go to 2 or 3 towns that have done some of these smaller developments and done it through, they've all done it through nonprofits. Because they really relate to what we're like as a town. No infrastructure, tend to be small, rural in nature. So we really.
Litchfield has public sewer and water. Whereas we
The
don't.
town does.
Town,
Yes.
yes, no,
This
these
is
are
Litchfield
town,
County.
Litchfield County.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm
it's
sorry. I
like-
thought you were referring
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah.
No,
town
no.
of Litchfield, and I was like, that's not as.
Exactly.
No.
Right. No, it's more like Sharon and Washington.
Or
and
Goshen or,
Cornwall and.
Thank you for
Norfolk,
clarifying.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's little-
yeah.
The ones that we're looking at was Kent, Cornwall and Salisbury right now.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, other takeaways is clear objectives and alignment with infrastructure and economic development priorities. So we really have to understand who we are, what we are, and where we're going, and how we align what we're doing on the housing side with anything else that may be developing in town. That's really, again, part of the POCD development process in terms of long-term vision for the town. Leslie, Kim, Tom, anything you want to add to that?
We've been busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I think one of the concerns that we've talked about a couple of times is not getting into the situation that's happening in Woodbridge
Right.
and how to approach it so it's not kind of a fear mongering of that, but approaching it proactively with what resources we do have as opposed to looking to bring in water and open us up to
Correct.
the situation that's happening there.
What can we do with what
we have.
exists today?
Right.
And
And
then,
what fits with
Remaking the
Bethany?
town.
Yeah.
okay. Questions, comments?
When you said not have a caravan of cars, are you thinking that we shouldn't go to these places or
Just
Just carpool.
carpooling?
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Okay.
that save everybody, I mean, save gas as well. obviously.
Oh, yeah, I mean, or a little bus or
Bus,
something.
I would take a bus but I don't have one yet.
I do have some questions.
Yeah.
Are there developers that are already targeting Bethany?
Not that we, not
Not
that
that
we're,
we're aware.
Which mentioned that, developers are starting to look. Are there issues with, because we don't have public transportation here? And that's one of the big things that is, I know through the 8002 that they're really, I went to Woodbridge had a meeting on it, people in that I attended. And one of the things like the new development in Woodbridge that we're talking about, that has city sewers, city water, all of that.
Right.
So it is more conditioned to that, whereas we
Correct.
don't have that.
Right.
That's why I was concerned, that's why I asked, are there developers that are like, hey, we want to do this? We had the Myers Road thing that was kind of pushed on us against
100%.
the town's will.
Yeah.
And completely fell through, bottomed out, and looked terrible. Not the town looked terrible, but obviously the people that did it were not developers, they were more,
Like,
had a vision.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just question about that. They referenced tremendous value about bringing this. What is the tremendous value?
about,
Doing,
Any kind of housing.
like a housing development? What is the tremendous value to the town for that?
I see.
Just because we're gonna be asked this, this is something that is gonna be extremely contentious.
Yeah.
And if we go in there and aren't correct with what we're talking about, because these people are going to be
Yeah.
doing their research.
Yeah.
And if we go in there and we start saying, hey, well, because maybe it's a feel-good story, that's not gonna be a sufficient answer. We
are
need
you
to have-
talking specifically about Rocky Corner?
No.
Just general.
Well, I use that as a reference. I just don't want it to be caught where
Yeah.
we aren't prepared for the questions that we're gonna be
Yeah, yeah.
asked. And then we look like we're not making good decisions based on, because the most important thing is what is best for the town of Bethany. What the state pushes down on us is not necessarily what's best for us. What is best and makes sense for the town of Bethany. Because as a new planning and zoning guys, we are getting complaints about us allowing industrial building in the industrial zone.
Right,
Yes, I know.
yeah.
Because yeah, I get that. So
Did that make our meeting run about an hour longer than it needed to?
longer than that, but yeah, so.
So you
and
guys have
multiple
been baptized by
meetings,
fire,
but yeah,
in other words.
the,
That's the best way.
Yeah.
to answer one of those questions, that's part of what this is all about, right? Is so that we can get our ducks in a row. These guys have knowledge and
Proactive.
resources and have done some research on this. We're here to gather some of that knowledge, and we're here to go on a journey to gather more knowledge. I agree. I don't want them tapping sewers and water in from Naugatuck and suddenly changing the density of that section of town, or from, Seymour or any of these places.
From Blue.
I think
Tech
we
on the
want
way
to
up
keep
is-
this, I think we want to keep this Bethany relative, but that's why we need to start doing this. Because the state has the right to come in and say, you will do this. We'll bring in some sewer and water, and then you will have to do this.
No, it's not.
And I don't want
But they're
that
not gonna
kind
pay
of
for it,
edict.
so,
Well, yes, that's true. They'll threaten to pay for it and then they won't.
or they'll make the people along the way pay for it.
Right, which is what I'm worried
Which is
about.
worse.
too. So
Yeah.
I'm worried about us getting stuck in a poke, and I don't want that. That's what this is all about, to get proactive and be ahead of that curve so that we can fend those things off. So we need to look at projects that work in smaller towns with lower density and with well and septic. Because there are solutions you can do, and at least if we put some armor on in that way. And again, that hard threshold isn't there anymore with 8,002, but there are inroads, and right now we have nothing to block it. And that's what worries me, because then they can start to get more aggressive about enforcing. At least if we're showing a plan and we're showing a trend and we're looking at trying to get there, they'll cut us some slack. At least that's how I understand it. And so I would like to go that pathway.
I would agree that I think the worst thing we could do, or any town can do, is just say, screw you, Hartford. We're not doing anything. I think the better thing to do, when what I've advocated 3 or 4 years ago when we got started on this, we need to have a plan and a vision for how we want to address housing in Bethany. It may not be what Hartford wants, but if we know it works for here, because we are not transit oriented, because we are not a big fish, my personal opinion is they're going to say, oh, okay, you're doing, we'll check back in a year.
Right, at least we're working on it.
Right.
But you're right. I mean, and they're not gonna plumb a rail line through Bethany or reroute buses through
You haven't
Bethany.
heard about the airport using that?
That would be a serious redevelopment, but yeah,
The new tweet.
dodge the horses during the show. We're not gonna draw that high density stuff because you can't live in Bethany without a car. And most of those communities are not built for that level of, family resources. But what we can do is that's why I use the term attainable housing. We can do entry level, like that thing in Brantford, where you get some younger families in, some first time buyers, give them a spot on the ladder so they can then buy up into another Bethany house.
And they can volunteer.
Or step down as an into elderly housing, and sell their big house and get a smaller one, but stay in Bethany and in the community, which has always been a goal. And we haven't really been able to achieve it. So I think there are things that we can start to play with and work with that will do that. As far as the large value, he actually mentioned that specifically in reference to that one Brantford property. The value was you bringing in more taxpayers at a higher density to pay for their cars as well as their houses and everything else that they bring in. But also, and those are people who are likely to stay if they're first time buyers, because then there are second time buyers and so on. But also it raised the property values, or it's planned, or they expect to raise the property values in the area around what is now a derelict lot. And that is also a value to the town. So there are things that we can look at that are secondary values that bring that will help sell it.
I'm sorry, you weren't finished talking.
No, I'm finished talking now and I cut you off, so I'm gonna let
No,
you go
you
back.
absolutely did not. Mike, well, one concern is like, something to think about is, if we're bringing young families in there with a couple kids, which is always great. The cost is a loss to the town of Bethany because we don't recover enough in taxes to pay for what it costs to educate those kids.
Hmm.
That's something that I think that a lot of people don't think about that we do need to consider. I
Absolutely.
served on the Board of Ed for 6 years,
Mhm.
and a lot of people lose track of what that actual cost is.
But I think the counterpoint here, and I don't know what the censuses look like. But we know since COVID, this has been a stuck market. We are not bringing in droves of new families and new blood and that sort of thing. I mean, I'm on monthly on the website to look at, I've been tracking home sales. They've been pretty damn dead flat. My point is you have to have some new fresh blood coming in terms of kids, because our school system cannot support going down below 300, because the infrastructure we have in terms of the facility, the teachers, administration, everything else like that. So I think it's important. We do need to look at that, but I don't see particularly the kind of development that we've been looking at. This is not building 4, 5-bedroom houses. Those are the houses that are going to bring the kids in. If you're talking about building smaller, 2-bedroom, maybe 3-bedroom, you're not bringing in 6 kids. You're bringing in maybe 1 or 2 kids.
And when they get to the 4 kids, they can buy up another house, a bigger house.
I don't see it as, with all due respect, I don't see people. You will have some that'll move in with the 4 or 5 kids, but I think most people that move into our town are 1 to 2 child families.
I think the thing,
So, I mean, that kind of supports the argument then.
So we're not trying to increase the school population like what's happening again in Woodbridge.
Yes.
And I think
Yeah.
the assumption also is people that are gonna buy homes and are gonna be new families coming into town. And as Steve just said, there'll be many people like me who wanna downsize my house and I wanna stay in Bethany. So
Mhm.
it's not just new families coming, but
Mhm.
I think it goes, I've been reading the minutes to your committee meetings and one of the things, and as well as attending some of the sessions that Ben Fink had been running. And it's clear that in order to be successful and not face, what we faced with Rocky Corner a few years ago in the gym, is to have upfront discussions with our town, not just to convince them that, we need to change the way we do things to allow people to have other housing options in town, but to find out from them, what would you like to see?
what would
I
they
mean,
need?
what do you think? Do you have housing needs? If someone, came to me and saying, well, what are your housing needs? Well, maybe I'd like to downsize, but stay in town,
Got it.
So there are ways to do, we're never gonna prevent being shot at, to
Yeah.
be quite honest, because
Literally.
that's the way there are people out there. But if we can get more of the community on our side ahead of time, at the same time of trying to change the regs, well, everything goes and this process goes in
Right.
sequence. Would have a better outcome, hopefully, than what we faced with the first
Right.
Rocky Corner discussion we had way back when.
Gotcha.
So
And to that end, I mean, again, I want to go back to one of our key takeaways. The importance of starting small, learning from proven models. What we've talked about within our group is it would be wonderful if a year from now we had 1 or 2, not necessarily built, but in process, 1 or 2 examples of smaller, well-done housing that we could actually point to, similar to what we hope when we go through our tour of Litchfield County, to be able to say, well, that looks pretty nice, 2 bedrooms and great, like it. If we can show and demonstrate what we're trying to do, at least initially, I think it will calm some of the concerns. We're not talking about building 100 apartment unit buildings. I mean, they got their fire down in Woodbridge right now.
Let them keep it.
Exactly.
Right, so I didn't lay out my view of the planning and zoning half of this meeting, which isn't really, we're not gonna have a second half of this meeting that is just run by us, but what I'm saying is that my view of this is for us to learn from their research and experience and to bring them in as advisors as we go along. But this is only the start of the process. I do not want this to be a top-down, imposed solution. We need to get our stuff in gear and in sync. And once we get a little bit more of a grasp of what is out there, what is going on in our town, and what we are facing in the town in terms of what properties might be available or other things what are constraints in Bethany, and what are other towns doing that are successful, then we need to open that process up, because now we've educated ourselves and we have some ability to respond when people ask us questions. But then we need to really involve the town, because honestly, if we try to do this and impose a solution, I don't care if it's perfect, we're going to get shot down, right?
Right.
And so that's what I think they also mean by involve the community, talk to the community, have discussions. They could be small groups. We could have little, I don't know, pizza night at Teddy B's or something, whatever. And just say, come and tell us what you think about housing in the southern half of the town, the northern half of the town, the part over by Downs Road, the part over by Seymour, whatever you want, wherever, and if, as we go through and look at what is available in the town and where we might be able to have some possibility to do something, maybe the old police barracks, for instance, then we talk about that neighborhood. We have some outreach and community discussion to see what they would be comfortable having next door or down the street. And I think that's the way you're going to be successful with this. If we just come up with this grand plan, I mean, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. And I think you are right, that you're very spot on, that we really need to listen to the town. But first, we need to be able to discuss it intelligently with them and provide some expertise for them. And that's what we're starting right now. That's my view of this.
Questions I have, part of your process has begun to look at some of the regulations, like, for example, you brought up the start small. Do our regulations currently support doing that?
You're on that.
In part, they do. I think, as Steve brought up, 8002, which is no small piece of legislation, I think it's 104 pages, make some suggestions and some things we can consider, and also some things we have to do. There's no question about that. So there's kind of a series of guide out there. You don't have to rush, but we have to do it logically so that it does fit into the plan of development. One of the big things that we have to consider in the near future is there's a housing management plan that each community is going to be required to have. There are a series of things that are going to happen at the state level, which are going to suggest what needs to go into that plan. And that's different than the previous plan that we did, and that's why they eliminated it. It was a good idea, they think, but it didn't accomplish what they needed to accomplish. And so what they're saying is, okay, here's what those plans need to include. Here's what they need to address. And so I think that's important that we take a good hard look at that. At the same time, we can look at incorporating some of those things into the plan of conservation and development. I agree that the public does need to be involved in some of these things. There can be public meetings. My opinion is that this effort should not come from this commission, either one of these commissions. It should come from a group that's not attached to the town, so that people can't say, why is the town doing this to me? There are a lot of little things that can happen. Somebody may have, 25 acres or 50 acres or whatever of property, and maybe they decide they don't want to be a farmer anymore. They don't want it, whatever. And maybe there's a portion of that they want to give to or sell at a lower cost to the organization, the private nonprofit that we talked a little bit about. We can have a whole session on that sometime. So there are a whole series of things that we can talk about. One of the things, and I just want to be really honest with this group, is that the town at some point is probably going to need to consider what a tax abatement or a payment in lieu of taxes program is what it would accomplish. It's critical, because without those programs, it doesn't pencil out. It just doesn't pencil out. And so developers are going to come and they're going to want to build as much as they can get away with building. On the other hand, we want to make it sure that it fits with the town in the context of the density, the location, the architecture, all that fits. And in order to do that, we need to at least listen to what their proposal is for tax abatement programs. And that's true no matter what the density is now all over the state. Its construction costs are so high.
Can I interrupt you
Sure.
one second, Herb? So just to go back so that I'm clear that I understood that you do see the role of this commission to deal with the regs and the housing management plan and other aspects that are going to be required and the plan of conservation and development. But what you said you didn't think was the commission's task, if you will, is to actually actively develop and or identify sites and types of developments and that kind of thing, that those kinds of very concrete,
Yeah.
developments are not really the charge here.
Right.
Just removing the barriers for those to happen, and maybe ad activity is something that's a group of individuals in town will want to do.
Absolutely right.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to be
At
sure.
some point in time, the planning and zoning commission is gonna be asked to vote on these things.
Yeah,
And the last thing you wanna do is be the one that proposed it or got this program going or talk positively about it, and then being asked to sit there and vote on it.
Mhm.
You wanna be able to, if you really feel badly and you think it's a terrible program, you wanna be able to vote no. Can't do that if you're the one that proposed it. So we need to be very careful about that going forward. And I think that's where Alex's group can be very helpful in terms of putting a lot of these things together. Certainly, I've only been doing this for 15 years with regard to housing, and so I really have a pretty decent handle on exactly what people are gonna say, why they don't like it, what the problems are, whether it's school kids, whether it's transportation, whether it's sewer and water, whether it's taxes, whatever. There are really good answers to all that stuff. We just need to know what they are before we get into a public session where people are yelling at each other. That's not.
Well, that's what this is starting.
Yeah.
That's how we get to learn that.
I'm sorry, Steve.
No, that's just saying that I wasn't saying we were going to build the project.
No question. I just
I
wanna,
was just trying to say that we need to at least cast about to get some of the general tone of what's going on in town. And then we maybe need to also cast about at all to look at whether there's a suitable. It's gonna have to be a nonprofit. All the for-profit people in this market are looking for the bigger projects, the 200 apartment.
But where the town can get involved is working with the state in terms if the state's offering funding to be able to. So P and Z looks at it and says, we would like to do a potential elderly district, elderly housing district, and we think this area might be a good candidate, 10 acres, whatever it is. You can get involved with the state to help fund all of that in a way that if it proves to be potentially feasible, the commission's role is simply to designate that as an elderly housing district. You're done. At that point, it's to the developers in the market to figure out, is that something that they're interested in? It may come down to what Hiram was talking about in terms of tax abatement and other types of things. But it's really your job as a commission at that point is to say, if we designate this, will they come? And the question is, we don't know.
The Myers Road issue that was 1 to 2 bedroom homes designed for smaller families, and it failed miserably.
yeah, there's a lot behind the scenes, and I won't go into it right now, obviously, but.
That's a fairly complex failure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it actually was 1 to 3. but that did take-
I agree with that. There's a lot of other things that.
And remember, that should have happened because, well, the planning should have been done correctly and the engineering. should
And
have
the
been-
execution should have been.
Right.
But
And it was.
still got greenlit and happened.
Well, that was an 8-30G application.
Yeah, that was,
Which the town really didn't have a lot of choice, or we would have been sued and would have lost.
What would, I mean, does the town have a lot of choice with what the state is pushing down on them now?
At this
I like
point,
what you
from
had
what I-
said, Steve, where you, both of you had said is to let's show at least action.
Mhm.
So that I think is
That's-
fantastic, and I support that 100%.
at this point, I think we do have some leeway and some ability to help avert that same sort of, you will do this decision. But the only way we avert it is by showing action, concrete action that we can point to. We have moved this, we have zoned this area for this kind of thing, but nobody's come. All right, I mean, you know, if you build it and they don't come, then at least you built it, right?
Yes, agreed.
And that is at least a shield to some degree. They can still, I mean, the state can still say, we're gonna do this. But then at least you can have, you can stave them off. And as Alex said, we're not going to be high on their radar screen because we're not right at a junction of a rail line and a bus line, right? We don't have a high density of shopping around here or anything like that. So they're not gonna come in and say, we want to take over your airport property and build 300 units, because then what are they gonna do, right? Like, where are those people gonna go? So, but at some point, they're gonna cast around and go, Bethany hasn't done anything. Right? So at least if we're doing something, we can hopefully show them what our plans are.
Even if
And
it's
maybe they
senior
can even
housing.
steer someone our way
Mhm.
to do what our plans allow, which is hopefully going to be Bethany oriented.
Mhm.
Because if we let them do it and force it on us, they're not going to care whether it's Bethany oriented.
See, one thing I think it's important too, is right in line with what you're saying now, is there are a series of choices that are built into this 8,002, where we can simply say to the council of governments, you do it, you figure it out, you tell us what is required. Or we can take the bull by the horns and say, this is what we think fits here, and here's why, and get the state to accept that as well.
Mhm.
My view is, and any towns that I talk with on this, is that we should do it, we should control it as much as we can.
Yeah.
Rather than let the regional planning agencies do it for us.
I'd rather provide my measurements to the tailor than have the tailor make a suit based on his estimate.
What is the deadline of the Council of Governments
There-
decision?
there-
Isn't it in June?
No, there are a series of things that have to be done, but.
I mean, some of their rules, they haven't fleshed out yet, as I understand it from that Scrod phone call from a couple of weeks
There's
ago.
One study,
It's still in
believe it or not, the whole state, you're supposed to have a sewage plan, infrastructure plan done by July 1. Not gonna happen.
Right.
It's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
There's some things that need to be done in late 2006, early 2007. So we've got a little bit of time to work some of these things out. And what I would like to be able to do is sort of put together what I suggest to you, and then have you decide, yeah, okay, we want to do that. We want to integrate this with the plan of conservation and development.
Isn't that's due to be done again now? isn't
That
it?
is overdue to be done at this point.
Okay.
So yes, that's another thing that's
We
on our
worked on that
agenda.
last
We'll
year.
have a discussion about that too, because you guys are going to also have to play
Yeah.
a big role in that. But that is something that we really need to do as well, because they can also yank that chain on us. And at least this way, we have a housing component that we can sort of pop into that. As long with this, that's kind of aids the development side, and the conservation side also needs to be in there. So there's going to be a lot of discussion over that through this year. And again, that may require a subgroup for working on and things like that. But I just want to get all these ducks in a row so that, because there's a lot of things shifting at the state level too, and I don't want to get caught in the.
There's a lot of moving parts, there's no question. And I think even some of the people at the state are saying, well, wait, this is too much to do all at once. I just want to make sure, number one, that it makes sense for us, that it's the right sort of size and scope and scale of what we want to do, and we fit it together so that it makes sense in the long term.
I guess another question is, like going back to.
Yeah.
Have some of your minutes have talked about the group looking at the regulations to see what needs to be amended? How far along have you gone that?
Well,
with that?
yeah, so that's the other part. Hiram has looked at a few things in our last meeting, dwelled on that. So if you want to talk about that.
One of the simple things that we can talk about are accessory dwelling units, for example. I had a workshop 2 weeks ago in a library in another town, and 60 people showed up to hear about this thing. So it was really, and one young fellow dragged his mother and said, I want her to be able to build something where she can stay. Yeah, I thought that was really kind of cool, worked out. Most people were very positive, and we need to make some tweaks to the regulations to incorporate those. And what some towns do also, and I've done this before, is show examples of what they would look like, how big they would be. So they're not, 2, 3, 4,000 square foot homes,
Right.
they're generally smaller.
That's a big thing where my parents live in California right now, which that also can open a can of worms. So you have to ride that pretty closely when you start. You need to limit their size, you need to limit their use. Because a lot of people have put in an ADU for a family member and then turned it into an Airbnb.
Yeah, right.
Now, granted, Bethany's probably not a hotbed for Airbnbs, but
But it can creep up on you.
it can creep up on you, and we are close to Yale. We
Yeah,
are,
yeah.
you know, close, I mean, and frankly,
Orange
it's a
Street
nice
had a whole
place to hike,
situation with that too.
you know.
Yeah.
But Hiram, I think our regs are pretty good in terms of regulating the size.
Of an
And-
ADU, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because we already have ADUs in the regs.
Yeah.
Right, I think the main thing that you've talked about is make them as of right, so they're not subject to public hearing.
Yeah,
So-
public hearing, the 8002, they took that out anyway, so we'll just tweak the regulations to make sure that we
Yeah.
don't get in trouble.
It's little stuff like that. It's not a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
but
Seth, I guess going forward,
He has an outline of
in
stuff.
terms of, you know, how P and Z will approach it. Unlike when I was on the commission last time, we looked at all the regs and,
Yeah,
you know, dumped them all. It would seem like there'd be incremental changes that we would make to the regs going forward
Yeah.
for the housing issue
Yeah,
as
yeah.
opposed to the overhaul.
absolutely.
Okay, so we'd be, okay.
I mean, I
have to
think your
kind of
overhaul
plan
set
those-
us up to do that, to be honest.
Well, we have to plan those out in terms of what we would need.
Yeah.
To make sure that we're fulfilling our own needs and
Mhm.
also fulfilling requirements of 8002 as well. So it'd be,
Well, I think that's what Hiram's talking about too, is like, here's some things where you can make changes. Here's some areas, start with this one, we'll move to that one.
Mhm.
And I think the ADU is a prime area for early development. The elderly housing we can look at again too.
And duplexes is the other
Yeah.
thing, right?
Duplexes, and I mean, there's some larger homes in town that may have 2 or 3 units in them right now. And are very nicely structured, and they have rentals in them. I think they're generally, or sometimes, or I wouldn't say generally, sometimes people feel as though rentals don't lead to home ownership. And I don't think that's really true. I think there may be a lot of young families that they want to come to a town like this, they want to rent the place, they can't afford to buy anything. And then after a few years, maybe they get their feet on the ground, maybe his business takes off or her writing takes off, whatever. And then they say, okay, we're ready for a smaller house. So
Well, even people just moving into the state. I mean, we rented for a year before we bought because you want to see the
Is this the
neighborhood.
right
You
place
wanna
for
see,
me?
Is this
Yeah.
the right town? Is this the right place? I mean, granted, where we rented was not in Bethany, and that also proved that that was not the right place. But that allowed us to find Bethany
Mhm.
and move here. I mean, which may be to the chagrin of the town of Bethany, but that's, but I think you need to provide entries into the town because you can capture those people. And then they can stay in the town and I mean, otherwise, eventually the town ages out anyway, and you know, you need new blood coming in at a certain exchange rate. Or the town just stops breathing. And so I think we need to keep that in mind, but we need to do it ideally on our terms rather than on someone else's terms.
yeah, absolutely. I think you're right, Stephen. I think that in the near future, what I'll be coming to the commission with and the about housing committee as well, is here are a few of the regulations that I think we should work on and get your agreement to do that, and then we go and do it. So we take it a little at a time, move that forward that way.
Again, that's part of why I want to start this now, so that,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
it's not like this has to be done tomorrow, right? But it does have to be done in the year and a half.
Yeah, this year, yeah.
And so, well, I mean, I'm gonna count the state to run off its schedule a little bit because why should this year be different? But I do think that we really need to realize that this is coming toward us and we need to have something to try to deflect it or control it, I guess is a better word.
I just want to put up. You can see that we've got a couple hard copies here. But
Of this.
so this is something that we developed, and since then, in fact, Will he's been a great resource.
Yeah.
I was in last week. He showed me how to look at GIS, and you can do overlays. And so as Bob noted, what this doesn't include, because we were the folks who produced this were very literal. We said we wanted water company, and I specifically said regional water authority. So the light blue is regional water authority. They do not have a Connecticut water company. That's at the northern end of the town, and it do not have Birmingham. That's at the western edge of the town. So those are two other areas that at this point are not developable. What has to be overlaid on top of this does not show watershed. This shows who owns the property. But we also have to be mindful of watershed and what's feeding where. So that, you know, in my conversations with Carol Goldberg on this, you know, her concern is that the state's going to say, you got all this land and you should be able to do all these wonderful things. When you start to look at it and understand exactly how the town is set up, we don't have a lot of development.
We're
And so
constrained. A lot of these large blank tracts are like on the north. Yeah, there's Connecticut state property up there.
right.
And they're not, you know, and then there's wetlands and then there's watershed, and a watershed can be developed, but you have to be cognizant of the watershed restrictions on it. So.
Trying to remember exactly where it is.
One of the things that 8002 does take a look at is state-owned properties in each of the towns too.
Yeah, yeah, good luck with that, because that's very hilly up there.
But the idea is to start looking at this to see whether or not there are potential parcels, not this side of town, that side of town, but very discrete areas that may be good for some sort of development, and whether that is for duplex or because that can be done within the regs right now. If it goes beyond duplex, our regs don't support that.
Right.
But if we were to look at identifying a potential area and try that out, and we can think it's a good idea, but if you talk to developers and they say, no, it's not good for the following reasons, X, Y, Z. Again, we can't make anybody build. All we can do is say we're going to make it as easy as possible within our constraints for you to be able to do something.
But has the advisory committee looked at private parcels that may be developable, you know, in addition to this?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that I was actually talking to Will about, he pointed out off of Bethmore,
Sure.
right by Atwater, where you've got the old shooting range that has never been remediated.
Right.
Right here.
Adam might know
Very
about that.
familiar with
Yeah.
that property. I used to collect plays for years.
Correct, so.
Hopefully not completely unhealthy.
But this is as way as an example, not saying that's it, but I believe it's brownfield right now.
Yeah,
Sure.
that is, they do not want you hiking in there. They don't want you in there.
Right. But again, an example of where the town can partner with the state to say, listen, we've got a parcel here that could be developed, but it needs to be remediated. If you come in and do the remediation, we'll work to put something up that begins to help with the housing issue. Can that happen? I don't know, but it's an example
That's
of,
the kind of thing that 8002 supposedly is supporting and providing some funding for. Whether they would even provide enough to remediate that brownfield, I don't
I
know.
doubt it.
Part of
There are some
significant.
brownfield grants, right?
If only it was
Part of the
covered,
law,
get people to just go in there and steal it.
Part of the law allow for the potential donation of state
Yes.
property.
Yes,
And also part of the law provides, when it gets funded,
Yeah.
grants for remediation.
right,
Now, wouldn't both those
right. And that's,
items in 8002 support looking more closely at the old state police building?
and that's sort of
You know,
prime target number one on my list.
yeah, but now that we have 8002, that almost says, look, that's my interpretation of it. Maybe that's not true,
is
but
that part of a housing management plan to actually identify sites, or is it?
It will it talks about state properties,
Yeah.
specifically state properties. It also talks about other properties that have development potential.
Yeah,
So we need to get.
It's sort of like an analysis of where you might be able
Right.
to do something.
I mean, it's not our job to assign properties per se, but
No.
to look for what's potential in the town.
Yeah.
And then have regs available to apply to those areas.
So I mean, going back just to that example, that property is owned by Olin, I believe, right now. The old shooting range.
The old Remington range?
Yeah, it's all.
Olin, I think, is the owner.
Mhm.
From their perspective, that's probably, they'd love to get it off the books. They can't get rid of it because they'd have to remediate it to get rid of it. So it's just sitting there doing nothing. That could be an example of whether it's the state, the town, or whatever, working with a privately owned parcel. And that's the key in this whole thing. I don't know if that's the only one that exists in town, but it's a sort of a good model in my mind for how we might be able to develop something discrete, very contained, and use it as an example, a model for what can be done. So that kind of throwing that out there.
Right, because that's a kind of a win-win for both. It allows the owner currently to sell a property that it would be difficult to sell right now.
Or just give it to you. If the state said, we'll remediate it, Olin can say, we'll give you the deed, we're out.
Right,
And write it off.
right.
Exactly.
So there's options there, so that can be a win-win. There's another brownfield, I think of. It's smaller though,
Is,
off the piece of Grant Road that sticks over. Isn't
is there one on 63 also?
this one here
I'm not sure.
a brownfield?
Really?
Yeah, because there was a garage there at one time.
If I could just interject, so we talked about a lot of this when I first joined the EDC 5 years ago, and Janet Brillman was. She brought some information about brownfield sites. I believe there's, I want to say minimum 9, maybe even 13 brownfield sites in town.
That really?
We talked about Atwater, we talked about the one in Grant Road. It's like a 1.5 to 2 acre parcel. It was a garage there back in the 20s, 30s.
The bottom of Grant Road.
It's on the dead end.
Yeah, the dead end portion.
It's up to where the residences are there now.
Yeah.
One of the things in particular we talked about was the state police property, in the Western District building that's there. We actually toured it.
I went with you that day.
I did not go,
I went in.
Tom Cavalier did that.
Did you also submit a grant or?
Did not, we haven't submitted any grants for anything, but, the one hiccup we had with that property, is we originally thought about affordable housing, 6 units, things like that, because Tom being a real estate guy. The problem with that property is, there's multiple problems with it, is that the current state police barracks is a separate 3 acre property, that is a separate 3 acre property, but they have taken part of that for their separate,
So,
for the state police building that's currently there now.
But now that might be time to change it.
Exactly. So I'm trying to figure out what the actual project is for the state police. Been talking to Leslie Zupkis and trying to figure out who to talk to because they're not quite in the planning stage yet, but they've been approved to start talking about it. But that building also has lead, asbestos, hole in the roof, water in the basement.
Dead animals.
And basically, the state had intimated that they would give it to us, but it's ours to remediate. If they were going to remediate it, they would have.
But
That's problematic. It creates a space that potentially is available, but it may not even be a full 3 acre
well,
property.
one of the reasons I'd like to use that as sort of a lead example.
Yep.
I want to find out if the state is going to put their money where their mouth is. Because if they basically say, yeah, we'll give it to you, but you got to remediate, it's like, all right, so you've got that building's been abandoned for what, 30 years?
more than that.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got a piece of property that you own that is contaminated beyond belief that nobody can do anything with, and you're just gonna sit there and not work with us on that. So it is a test case to find out where are they on this? Are they really committed to it? Or are they willing to put money behind it to develop something that could be helpful? We'll find out. I don't know.
I mean, that would be nice to turn that into something other than a derelict building on the side of the road.
I have a feeling the state police plan on expanding the footprint of the existing barracks.
According to what I heard from Carol, what she's heard is they're gonna build on the same footprint right now.
But I believe, and I could be completely wrong, the facility itself is going to grow a little bit larger, but perhaps on the same plot of land, I guess. is the
I
right
don't
word to
know.
utilize.
I mean, wasn't part of any of the conversation, but again, this is where some conversations, what I hope to do is talk with Ben Lovejoy, who's the contact at DOH, and see if we can get more information. If we can get more information, definitely feed that back to you folks.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if you could parade it for them as a proof of concept or a test case, like
Right.
you say, to show they can put their money where their mouth is.
Exactly.
Right, because it's a great project for them to take on. Like, here, we cleaned it up and gave it to the town. You know, it would be nice, but if they don't, it also shows
Exactly.
their level of will.
Could we take a broader view now? About the two of us working together? How do you want to see that going forward? Is what I'd like to address. Although, you know, Hiram, you were gonna talk about 8,002 as part of the second part of this agenda, or how do you wanna?
Well, let's do a quick time check. It's
Yeah,
about 10
I was
hours.
gonna say that now, we've been an hour already.
Yeah,
So
so
Hiram, do you have, how long is your 8,000?
I don't really need to go into a lot of parts of it. I would just tell you that creating that housing management plan is critical. And we have to, at some point in the near future, decide just how we're gonna do that. We've got a little bit of time because OPM has to get some numbers together first before we can get them. So I think we've got a little bit of time, but we need to decide how to do that. And I'll get you more detail. I can get you, you know, a paragraph in each one of these sections that are important. There are some sections of the plan that are not really critical and applicable to us. Transit stuff is not really critical to us. There are sections of it that include things like first-time home buyers plans. The state controls that money, but still, I think that's something we need to take a look at and be careful that we can suggest that people take a look at those kinds of things. There are other grants and cleaning up some of the existing state properties that are not clean, for example, might be part of it as well. But I can get you a list of just what I think we should consider in the near future, go from there and make sure that everybody's on the same
Could
page.
they ask local P and Zs to be the source of writing these things, or is it just sort of each town, wherever the town is? and-
There's a choice that comes up there. We can
Okay.
tell the cog to do it
Okay, but, or the P and Z,
Or the town.
or the town.
Or the town.
oh, the town, whatever
Yeah,
that
it's
is.
the
Whatever- I mean,
town.
what else
But
is it
there-
gonna be? Yeah,
Well, right,
And
well,
that's
that's
right.
why we're starting this, is because where else is it gonna be? But it may be, as Hiram intimated earlier, that this will best be served by forming a separate group to do this, but I think it has to come from here.
Okay.
And I think we're still gonna need to make sure the regulations align with whatever goal we have.
How do we?
How do
We
we
choose
do
to go that way. How do we keep ourselves aligned with what the cogs are doing? And can we kind of pilfer some what they're doing to bring it to life? Do we have representation?
well, that separate issue,
Okay.
that is something that you need to designate a member of the commission to be representative for regional
I
planning.
remember doing that.
But I do know that Carol is been involved in a lot of
Okay,
conversations.
so there is connection.
Mhm.
Okay, all right.
From a staff point of view, I'm happy to serve that function as well, because I hope that I'm involved in putting together the plans for the town. And I talk to all the cogs quite frequently, so I'm happy to do that as well.
Okay, all right.
So you were on the last call anyway, but we need to, stay up on that, pretty much in real time. So, yeah, I don't wanna add too much to your responsibilities, but if you're willing to do that.
Especially
Yeah.
since it sounded like Mr. Harrison was volunteering.
I was wondering if it
It's entirely different, but we'll see going forward. We'll see
Yeah, I mean,
going forward.
if you're interested.
I just want to get him back for volunteering me to be the secretary of planning and zoning without my knowledge.
I think that's an easy job.
I did not know that when he said that, though.
Sidewalks.
I stand vindicated.
Well, but that's the other thing, is if we're gonna caravan up to Litchfield, do we have to notice that meeting?
Depends on who's gonna go. And if we're gonna have a quorum, yeah, we probably should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need to keep that in the mix too.
Yeah.
I think that's our next get together, but I do think we need to have a couple more of these meetings at least going forward, to keep this ball rolling on a reasonable time frame. And like I said, ultimately, maybe we end up creating another group
Mhm.
to do this
Mhm.
specific
A work
project,
group.
a work group.
Yeah.
But then at least we can hand them something to start with and say, here's the ball, take it. And I think that's kind of where we are right now, is just shaping that ball. And
That was the biggest problem with being on planning and zoning, is that like you said before, you spend so much time doing the zoning part that you don't have time to do the planning part,
Mhm.
so.
and that's
But
the
I
frustrating.
can, I
that way
can
we
tell you
always
the work
focus, and
group,
we all know that.
right, the work group worked well because we were under a tight deadline to do the
Right.
affordable housing plan.
Mhm.
Because we had a state grant to pay for Hiram's time, but that had an expiration date of June 30.
Yeah, it's like
Mhm.
6 months.
We convened like late February, early March, so.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, well, I felt like a taskmaster. I mean, we were on a forced march. Every 2 weeks we were, and it was doing we couldn't
Yeah.
get together in
Well, I
person.
want to keep P and Z together, so we're not gonna meet every 2 weeks. They all can find
No,
out
but-
where I live if they
No,
don't
but
know
the work
already.
group worked well. Kim and I were members of P and Z as part of the work group, but we had 4 other members
Mhm.
of. the
I was
general
on
public.
it,
Right, and that's what I think we ultimately
on it,
want
Lars
to
was on
do,
it.
is hand this off to a group that's more general public.
Can we establish that now? I mean, or do you want to establish that now?
I think let's do the
Yeah,
site
I suggest-
visits and a couple other things. I see that in maybe 6 weeks.
Okay.
I don't plan on doing that like in December, but I
Yeah, good.
don't think we're ready yet. Because we need to give them some kind of a charge, some kind of a vision,
Mhm.
and I don't think we're there yet.
The sooner we can get a date on the calendar for
So,
the trip, the better for.
so get all those heaters out of the barns and melt the snow up in Litchfield, so we can go up and see
I
it.
think if I can just put
I
in,
ran in Litchfield this weekend, there's a lot of snow out there.
There's a lot of snow down
There's
here.
more now. Actually, we have more now. We got more this time than they did.
yeah,
Yeah, it's weird how that works, but I mean, Bethany always gets more snow than everybody.
I think the plug that I would give for the trip, and maybe I don't need to do it, but it's just to say that, because it was part of my professional background, so I'm familiar with it all, is that it is a way to sort of get in our minds what can be possible here that has been so successful in other places. And the sign of success is nobody knows that housing is any different than anybody else's.
Right,
I like
so that's what I would like.
It's scale, it's quality, but it also hopefully is a way to talk with the people who were part of a sort of private nonprofit approach to doing it. Their relationships with the towns were very strong, but they were separate enough that they could figure it all out, get the grants necessary, do all that. The town didn't do that, they did it. And then they worked with the town to make sure it would fit the needs, you know? So I think in a lot of this kind of chatter around is affordable housing, whatever name we give it, you're never gonna convince everyone that this is a good idea. But having something that is compelling as a good quality thing that can happen is important, because, you know, it's from my point of view, it's the way Bethany probably was 50 years ago. A whole range of things that were affordable to a whole range of people.
Mhm.
And no reason why we can't do
So there
something.
was no regulations back then.
That's right. It was,
Should we wanna go that way?
However you wanna build it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe there were some downsides to that as well.
Yes, exactly.
What was the development? Was it Bethany Woods that's off of 69?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one in there,
A
yeah.
good example of that.
Yeah. I don't know who did that at the time, but yeah,
Yeah, Will knows.
yeah. But, yeah, anyway,
So
I think the trip will be good.
Yeah,
my takeaway from this discussion is for us to continue as a group to really dig into low hanging fruit opportunities within the existing regs. And maybe sharpen that a little bit for your consideration.
Okay.
Is that,
Oh, yeah, excellent.
Or just really-
anything else
we have another
that
meeting
comes to
Monday.
your mind?
Yeah, no.
That would be a good use of our.
No, that would be
resources.
actually helpful if you can identify certain regs that you think would be easy to adjust.
Let's leave that be our agenda and do that next time.
Do you have an agenda for Monday already?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
we've got a list together pretty already, and we can have that shaped.
Yeah, we haven't really talked a ton about it, but it would be good. Yeah.
Well, but that's where we come into play, right?
Yeah.
And then that's an easy thing, because that's first steps that don't require funding, that don't require outside groups and don't require
Right.
that much planning.
Right.
And
Right.
public hearing, but.
And if-
And by the
Yes,
way,
but we have.
Hiram, I would say we need to merge that with your reading of 8,002.
If there are things
in
we have
terms
to
of
adopt and
what
add.
are we gonna have to do anyway?
Yeah, right.
Because it will be in
Yeah, that'd
line
be
with.
helpful.
Yeah, but you said you could put that out to us, right?
Yeah.
Can you do that within?
Won't be for Wednesday.
No.
Oh, that's right. We meet Monday, they meet Wednesday. next week.
Yeah, all right, so anything else, because we can adjourn this, then I just wanted to, for my group, do a little talk. Anything else?
No, I don't have anything else. Do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Okay,
Well said.
Tom, anything?
Yeah. Excuse me,
Input.
can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I heard a lot of information tonight. It seems like we have a bit of direction now. And the only thing I can say in the background, being in construction, subcontracting for 40 years up in the northwest corner with a lot of small towns, that there is a great, there's an acceptance and need for 1 and 2 bedroom unit housing. And that people are all driving the senior bus here in Bethany for over 10 years. There's people in Bethany, seniors, that are living in homes that are crumbling around them. And I think there's a certain amount from the original surveys on the committee that was together before I came in on this second iteration, that shows that there's a general acceptance for the concept of housing, downsize from seniors, and also for first generation buyers, young professionals. Most of them don't have children, and 1 and 2 bedroom entry levels. So I think it's not a hard. I don't think if we can, like Leslie did, if we can bring some physical examples of this done in towns that are simple to us, similar enough to us, that it's not as tall a climb as it seems at first. That's all.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's actually good insight.
You call this to order, so I'm gonna let you,
I will. Is there any other comments that we need to hear? I think we've done pretty good work tonight, and thank you guys for presenting all your work, and for doing all that work. But we gotta roll up our sleeves and get this going forward too. But I think it's time to adjourn the meeting, because we all have other things to do in our lives. So unless there's objection, we'll adjourn. No objection here.
Thank you.
thank you all.
Thank you all for coming, especially you guys for your active participation. I really